Hi, in this video I'm going to walk you through the three pillars of persuasion that Aristotle put forward. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize myself and let's get to it. So first off, there are three, basically. There are five in actuality. I'll get to the last two at the very, very end, but they're more like bonus ones. The three that really you need to worry about are logos, pathos, and ethos. So let's get to them. First off is logos. Logos is probably an easy one to understand, right? It sounds like what it is. It's logic. So traditionally based on the strength of logic and the argument, it's clarity, it's reasoning, it's evidence. Logos sounds like the word logic. If you know anything about your Greek Bible, you might have heard the word logos used in that. When Jesus referred to himself as the Word, he used the word logos. So it goes back that far. It's when you use logic to make your argument. Like in this picture here, you see this Pop Chips ad is not saying that Pop Chips are delicious. It's not making the argument that Pop Chips will make you happy. It's not saying anything at all except that Pop Chips will not make you fat. Really, that's all it's saying. You can eat more Pop Chips. You can eat twice as much as kettle style chips. They won't make you fat. Eat Pop Chips. It's logical to eat them, right? It's kind of cold when you think about what this ad is really saying. That's logos at work. So let's look at some more ads. Like this advertisement here. This is just saying Verizon has more coverage. It's showing you a map. Is it true? Well, who knows? I kind of doubt it, but that's one of the things about logos. It's easy to lie and still look like you're being logical. Very easy, right? I don't know if this is actually true. I feel like AT&T has quite a bit more coverage than Verizon, but that's how logic can work. Let's look at the next one. This ad here just says 80% of bacteria are not on teeth, but Colgate protects 100% of your mouth. Numbers. When you see numbers in advertising, that kind of thing, that's usually a sign that you're having logos used to try and convince you, because that works. Logic. How about, so when you're using logos in your speeches, in your arguments, you want to make sure that your argument is clear and reasonable, right? If you are trying to convince your people of something that doesn't make any sense, then you're going to totally lose them when it comes to logos. You want to offer proof, evidence, things with sources that the audience trusts. So this is where sources come in. This is where bringing in outside evidence and arguments work. If there are any good points that your opponents might have, then you can make concessions. That's also a type of logos argument. So just arguing your side and never admitting that the opposing side might have good points isn't good arguing, isn't good reasoning. It's important to make concessions. It shows the audience that you are a logical person, that you're reasonable, that you've thought this through. So that's a way to show logos. You also have to have strong critical thinking to avoid fallacies. Logical fallacies are bad logic. That's when logic has gone wrong. And if you have fallacies in your arguments and your audience notices, then you'll lose them right off the bat. They won't listen to you anymore. They shouldn't, at least. Logical fallacies are used a ton in advertising, in political arguments, in speeches all the time. Just most of the time, people don't catch them. But when you do, that should give you a big sign that you should be listening to that person. So good ways to sharpen your critical thinking skills: debates. Debates with friends are a great idea. With your brothers, sisters, family members, anything like that. I like to debate with my friends. You can also join debate clubs, that sort of thing, if you want to get even more organized. But that's a great way to build your critical thinking skills. You can also do things like Sudoku, Wordle is a great way to sharpen your critical thinking skills, puzzles. Sudoku is crazy because even though it isn't actually, it doesn't seem to me like it should be sharpening your critical thinking skills because it's math, but it is critical thinking, right? Sudoku isn't actually math. It's critically thinking about what can fit into what square. The numbers they could be symbols and it would still be useful. And then there are things like the believing game. Believing game is a lot of fun if you've never tried it. It can be kind of scary, but it's where you take a belief of yours that you hold and you ask yourself, what would need to be true? What would need to happen for you to believe the opposite of that? So for example, what's your belief about God? Or what's your belief about aliens? Or what's your belief about ghosts? Take one of those three, if you have a belief about it already, and ask yourself, what would need to happen or what would need to be true in the world for you to hold the completely 180 opposite belief? If nothing could happen, then you don't have a critical approach to that. You have faith, which maybe you think is valuable, but that's not critical thinking. So there should be something that could happen that could change your mind. Right? There should be something. So be thinking that. Those are ways to sharpen your critical thinking skills. It's kind of scary, but I think they're really valuable things to do. So that's using logos. 6 popular logical fallacies that you want to make sure you avoid. There are over 100 logical fallacies out there, but 6 popular ones that I want to talk about, just to mention some. Ad hominem. This is a popular one. This means against the person. This is just when you attack the person rather than the issue. Just insulting someone. That's called an ad hominem attack. And it's a logical fallacy. When somebody resorts to this in a debate, then it usually means they've lost the debate. There's also slippery slope. That assumes the worst possible chain of cause and effect, right? This would be, if you're my mom, you would say something like, hey, if you don't clean your room, then you're going to end up failing out of school and you're going to end up homeless and you're going to end up dead. That kind of slippery slope. That could happen. That chain of events could happen, but it's assuming the worst possible outcome of all of those. That's called a slippery slope. You hear that a lot in politics, don't you? Number 3 would be bandwagon. This creates the impression that everybody's doing it, and so should you, right? So if everybody is voting for this person, you don't want to be the weirdo who's not. If everybody's doing this, then it must be the best thing. But that's not the truth. That's not the truth at all. Bandwagon is just mob mentality. It's a logical fallacy. There's also scare tactic. This creates fear in people as evidence to support a claim. So there is such a thing as creating like passion in someone where you tell a story that might make somebody realize that they're in a dangerous situation. That's not the same thing as scare tactic. Scare tactic is simply creating fear as evidence. So you're trying to scare someone purely as the evidence to support your claim. That is a logical fallacy, right? For example, trying to say that immigrants are eating your pets and just to scare people to hate immigrants for something like that when that's not even happening. That's a scare tactic. And it's highly effective against people who are already prone to fear, people who are already upset. It's highly effective, unfortunately, to motivate people. Number 5 would be false cause. This wrongly assumes a cause and effect relationship, right? So this would be saying, because this happened, now this happened, but when there actually isn't a relationship. So you were late to, you didn't tell me about the party you went to, and so then I ended up slipping and breaking my arm because I was so upset about it. Those aren't related. Like if somebody tells you something like that. I had a student recently tell me a story like that. Like, my girlfriend said that because I didn't tell her I was going to a party, now she ended up having a migraine. Those are not related. That's false cause. That's somebody gaslighting you into trying to feel bad about something. And then number 6, red herring. This presents an irrelevant topic to divert attention away from the original issue. So this is just coming up with something completely different, just to completely distract from what you're originally talking about. My mother was an expert at the red herring. So I'd be arguing with her about something like, oh my God, I'm so angry at my sister because she did this thing. And all of a sudden, we're talking about a completely different topic. All of a sudden, we're talking about my aunt, or we're talking about not even family. We're talking about a movie, and we're arguing about that instead because she brought up a red herring and I bought it. I just went off and now we're not even discussing the same thing. That's a powerful move. It's a logical fallacy because it's not logical to bring up a completely irrelevant topic in the middle of a discussion, but it can work. So that's a red herring. Those are six popular logical fallacies. Hopefully this helps you understand what a logical fallacy is. It's bad logic, right? It's when logic is used poorly. It can be effective in persuading people, but it's bad. It's not good stuff. Don't use it in your speeches. Don't use it in what you're working on, but be aware. I want you to know that this is out here. As you know about this stuff, the more you know, then the more you can spot it when people are using it against you. So let's take a look at some examples. So what about this? This is a political ad from back when Obama ran for president. Romney's not the solution, he's the problem. Which one of these is this? Ad hominem, slippery slope, bandwagon, scare tactic, false cause, or red herring? Yeah, I think, let's go back to that one. Can we go back to that one? I think that this is ad hominem, right? So these aren't cut and dry, by the way. You might disagree with me on some of these, but I think this is an ad hominem attack. He's just attacking him. He's just saying Romney's a problem. He's not saying why. He's not explaining anything. He's just, Romney's a problem. That's not effective. I mean, it is effective, unfortunately, but it doesn't actually mean anything. Let's see the next one. Axe body spray. Spray here and here gets you the ladies. What is that? Well, from my opinion, that is false cause. I don't think that if he ends up with these women, that the cause was Axe body spray. That's my personal opinion. Having used Axe body spray as a teenager, I know that nobody wanted to be around me when I used it. So that, I think, is false cause. But that's my personal opinion on that one. Let's look at another one. Oof, smoking isn't just suicide, it's murder. Which one is that one? Ooh, I think it's scare tactic, because I think it's just using fear to motivate you. This smoke has made a plastic bag around this baby's head, and it's saying smoke will murder your baby. That's just not true. My parents smoked around me when I was a baby, and I am alive and well. It's not a good thing to do. It's a terrible idea to smoke around children, but it's not murder. That's kind of a false. That's maybe a different fallacy altogether, because that's making a false equation, right? So, but either way, I think it's also scare tactic. Could be false cause. I don't think it's false cause. I think it's something else, but it's still a fallacy. How about this one? Kids, if you wouldn't eat your cat, why eat a turkey? What is this one? I think it's a red herring. I think this is something completely separate, right? You're trying to convince people, especially children, to not eat a turkey. So you make this picture, you put a cat's face on a turkey, and you say, hey, look, you don't want this, right? It could be anything. If you wouldn't murder a nun, why eat a turkey? Like, it could literally say anything. It doesn't, you wouldn't eat your aunt, your grandma, why eat a turkey? It just feels to me completely unrelated. So it looks like a red herring to me. But yeah, interesting, huh? Could also be bandwagon if like nobody was eating turkeys. Maybe. And then this one. Attention, lunatic atheists and their lawyers. Anti-God is anti-American. Anti-American is treason, and traitors lead to civil war. Oof. What about this one? Yes, this is a slippery slope. A very slippery slope. And one of the slipperiest. That's bonkers, right? Yeah, I don't think being anti-God leads to civil war, but here we are. So, what about this one? McDonald's hamburgers, over 100 million sold. What do you think this might be? Bandwagon. Yeah, they're trying to get you to say you don't want to be one of the weirdos who did not eat a McDonald's hamburger, right? I think it's effective. Yeah, so let's move on then to Pathos. So we did Logos. Now we're doing Pathos. Pathos attempts to affect and use the emotional state of the listener. So Pathos kind of sounds like passion. That might help you remember it, right? So pathos could be any type of emotion. So it could be sympathy, humor, shock, anger, excitement, disgust, joy. I have the words trailing off the screen there because it could be any emotion at all. Any emotion. When you're trying to affect the emotional state of the listener, that's pathos. So it's different from scare tactic, because scare tactic is trying to present fear as evidence. Pathos is just trying to change the emotional state of the listener, right? As a persuasive technique. So this picture here, bicycles don't come with bumpers. And we see this picture of this girl. I think that's pathos at work. We're supposed to see this. We're supposed to think, oof, and have some empathy, have some sympathy for this girl and think, yeah, I don't want to be the cause of this. And maybe drive better, maybe be more careful, right? Pathos. Let's look at some more examples. This one, I think, is a shining example of pathos. These commercials, I remember when I was a kid, they would come on during, when I was watching cartoons especially. Sarah McLachlan song would come on in the arms of an angel, and you'd see these really sad animals, and it would say, just for $19 a month, or just for the price of a cup of coffee a day, you can support an animal. And it would show these really sad animals. I can hear the song just looking at this picture, and it motivated me. I sponsored a few different animals as a kid. I sponsored a child in like somewhere in Africa even. So these commercials worked really well on me when I was young, because they were tapping into my empathy, and they worked. Seeing sad animals and children works really well on me. So it's not scare tactic, because these are truly sad animals and truly sad people, right? It's a type of manipulation, but it works. Let's see another one. What about this one? Smoking kills, so why bother starting? You see this gun being loaded with cigarettes. It's supposed to be making you feel a certain way. It lists all these different things that smoking does, which to me makes this kind of seem like it borders a little bit on logos, like it's trying to be logos, but the whole picture seems to me very pathos. It's really trying to be like, hey, smoking. This next slide shows pathos in a totally different way. Like, it doesn't have to be sadness. It doesn't have to be, you know, something shocking. It can be happiness. Like, this picture looks like heaven, right? It looks like if you drink a Coke, you're going to be taken off in the distance there. It looks like heaven in the background to me. Look at these hands here. This person's relaxing in the grass. This looks beautiful. The sweat rolling off the Coke. This looks really, really nice. This is also pathos. This is trying to motivate you to feel happiness, right? Feels good, looks good. And this is also pathos, right? Yeah, size doesn't matter, she's lying. And there we go. Sex is also pathos. Sex sells, and this is what's happening in this advertisement as well. So that also works, also pathos. And this is also pathos. Your wife is hot. Time to get your AC fixed. Ha 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 ha. Humor is one of the best uses of pathos. If you can get your audience laughing, and you have bridged the gap, really, really. If your audience is laughing, they're not disappointed, they're not disagreeing with you, right? They are agreeing with you in some fundamental ways. Humor is incredible to use. It's hard to use correctly, but if you can, go for it. So using pathos. First, use enargia. So this is when you create a powerful or vivid description meant to transport the audience. So it's when you paint a word picture in your audience's mind, right? Picture it, Sicily, 1942, and you paint a picture. You describe something where people like go, oh wow, yeah, now I understand what that's like. Now I understand what the Taj Mahal looks like. Now I understand what skydiving would feel like, right? Because you've painted this picture for them. You can also show emotional control. Right? Pathos isn't just evoking emotion in the audience. It's you showing emotional control as the speaker, because you are the emotional role model. Cicero described that as when the speaker is before the audience, they are an emotional role model. So when you show emotional control, you are demonstrating pathos, and it makes you more persuasive. Using all of these emotions, humor, surprise, joy, love, so positive ones. It doesn't have to be negative, but you can use positive emotions, right? Humor, you can surprise your audience, you can share joyful stories, you can share stories that evoke love. You can also use sadness, anger, and pain, but only if it's truly legitimate. You don't want to be using it as evidence, right? Because you want to be avoiding fallacies. And then telling stories. Stories are a really good use of pathos. Humans key into stories. We love stories. We listen, we perk up, we pay attention when a story starts. We like them. We see ourselves in stories. So use them. Use stories as much as you possibly can in any presentation. But when you're trying to be persuasive, stories work. So yeah, I'm going to move this over a little bit. So then the third one is ethos. Ethos. And this one's a harder one to explain, right? Because logos sounds like logic. Pathos sounds like passion. Ethos sounds like ethics. But that is not what it means. It does have the same root in the word ethics, but it's the ethical standing of the speaker. So another way to put that in modern day speak would say credibility. It's the credibility of the speaker. So how credible, like it says here, how credible they are, how honest they are, their trustworthiness, and their reputation. In today's age, that's harder to gauge because we don't know each other as well as people in the past have. Our communities are massive. We live in cities, we live in countries. There's oftentimes you don't even know the person that's talking to you. So what do you do? How do you establish ethos with an audience? Well, it's still very important. You still need to have credibility with your audience. Let's look at some ways advertisements do it. Kicks, when they say kid tested, mother approved, or kid tested, parent approved, as the new box says, that's trying to establish credibility with you, the buyer. Let's look at some more examples. This one, trusted by moms, and it tells you here, Sydney 2 gives this 5 stars, makes cleaning up, disinfecting a breeze. I hope you know that Sydney 2 is not a real person. If you see this advertisement, there's no way that's a real person. But they add this on here because it works. People see that. They don't engage their critical thinking and they go, oh, neat. Yeah, someone out there said that it's great. Somebody named Sydney. It's never true. It's never ever true. This one's also ethos. Quantum of Solace, James Bond wears this watch. Don't you want to be like James Bond? You should wear this watch too. Notice it's not saying Daniel Craig wears this watch. It's saying James Bond wears this watch. It's using the ethos of James Bond. It's using the credibility of a fake person to sell you a watch. And it works. It works, because that's how humans are. This also works. Taylor Swift. Who doesn't like Taylor Swift? Who doesn't want to be like her? She likes Diet Coke. So don't you want to drink Diet Coke too? Yeah. Ethos. That's why you see celebrities endorsing things. That's why you see it. Because of ethos. They're borrowing that celebrity's charisma. They're borrowing that celebrity's character, and they're attaching it to their product. They're saying, you trust this celebrity, so then you should trust our product, right? That does also mean that if this product turns out to be garbage, then this celebrity should also take a hit on their ethos. That's how this system should work. A lot of influencers today kind of use this as their method. Like they say, hey, I'll advertise for anybody. But then it turns out that, it's one thing they're advertising for turns out to be a scam. Then they should take a hit in their personal, like how the audience sees them. That's how it should work. So when using ethos for your persuasion, first, you want to demonstrate goodwill to your audience. That's the main thing you first want to do. So you don't want to stand up before your audience and sound like you're attacking them. You want to start with making sure your audience knows that you're here for their best interest, right? You want to connect with your audience. That's how you start. So that's important for building ethos. And then you want to establish common ground with your audience. So who is your audience? You need to do some audience analysis ahead of time. And you want to make sure that you have some type of common ground with them. Like, hey, we're all students in this room. And so therefore, we all have this same problem in common, right? Pardon my cough. Or, hey, we are all Americans and we're all fighting for the same thing. Or we're all human beings. And so we all have the same need. Find that common ground. Otherwise, you might find that your audience doesn't really see you as part of their same clan, and they might not see that ethos. So it's important in the beginning of your speech is to demonstrate goodwill and establish common ground. It's also important to be sincere. You can't fake it. Faking it gives you negative ethos, and people are really good at telling. You are, right? You can tell when people are faking it, and you hate it, don't you? Right? So your audience will do the same thing. So don't fake your sincerity. If you don't actually have it, don't try and fake it. Just talk, right? Pick a different topic if you need to. Also, using credible, reliable sources and sharing those sources is a really good way to get ethos. So when you are you're standing up there explaining like, hey, my argument is that we should adopt more dogs. We should adopt pets. Like, who are you? Who am I? I'm just Steve Cave. Who is this? But if I pull in some good sources, some famous people, I say, hey, Oprah says this. Hey, Obama says this. Hey, Jesus Christ says this. I'm using famous people that the audience might respect. That's borrowing their ethos and attaching it to myself. And then saying, hey, look, right? There's a danger here because if I take people that the audience disrespects and attach them to myself, and that's a dangerous thing. So you want to do audience analysis and make sure that you don't quote people that the audience disrespects. So like, for example, if you're here in Seattle, I don't know that quoting Elon Musk is the best way. I think that he has a lot of people who hate him here, for example, or the same thing with Jeff Bezos. I think a lot of people hate him here. So think about that. Do some audience analysis ahead of time. That's why you have to do some work before you do your speeches. But using credible, reliable sources and sharing them. Say, hey, according to so-and-so, this is true. That's why you do that. And then also make sure that you plan your speech and speak carefully, right? Mistakes are normal, but every mistake you make makes you look less credible. So that's why you want to not make mistakes during your speech. Saying ums here and there is natural. You want to have at least a few of those. That's why I don't mark you down at all for any ums. And ums are normal, but mistakes, they make you look a little messy. When you do make mistakes, what do? Well, you just keep going. Don't go or make a noise. Don't apologize. Don't say anything about the mistake. Just pause, maybe smile, and keep going. Don't tell the audience that they need to be upset about the mistake. They don't know that it was a mistake unless you tell them. So just keep going, right? So those are the three. Let me move this up here so you can see ethos, logos, and pathos, right? So these are the three that you're going to need to make sure that you use in your speech. So I told you there was some bonus. There are two others. Let's take a look at those. Down here, they are the other two appeals. Let me move this over here. And those are kairos and telos. So kairos means appeal to timeliness. So that just means making sure that you give your speech at the right time. You give your argument at the right time and the right season. We don't really think about it very much because, it sort of is built in, right? Don't give a speech trying to argue that we need to save the whales after whales are extinct. Hopefully that makes sense. And then telos, this speaks to purpose, as in humanity's purpose, the purpose of people. And so teleological arguments work really well if you and your audience share the same cosmological view. But if you don't, then it doesn't work at all. So this would be an argument like, hey, God's purpose for you is blank, but it only works if the audience also agrees in that and follows the same gods. Then that's the only way that works. Otherwise, it doesn't. So that's why we don't use these, because you have to either have the exact same worldview for telos, or kairos, you hopefully are already making an argument at the right time. Hopefully your speech isn't going to be something that is out of time and in the wrong place, right? So hopefully this makes sense. Those are the 5, but the 3 you're going to use Aristotle's Pillars of Persuasion. So let me know if you have any questions about any of these, and I'm excited to see what you come up with.